Hey, this is Yang Nguyen, and you're listening to the Emmy Wealth Builder podcast, where we celebrate incredible immigrant success stories, share proven strategies, and give you actionable steps to build your wealth, freedom, and a lasting legacy. Let's go get it. So if you think you need rich parents or fancy connections to make it in real estate, this one is gonna blow your mind. A lot of us first-generation kids grow up just trying to survive. But Joette, she turned survival mode into straight up power mode. And I'm super excited for her to share her story growing up in the US, got hooked on real estate investing, and now creating a business and an investment strategy that really merged well for her expertise and her goal. And she has helped thousands of investors close deals and protect them legally. So here is how you know this episode's gonna be packed with jam. So Joette, take us away. Introduce yourself and help us understand what you do and how you grew up.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. My name is Joette. I am a first-generation immigrant here. So my mom is from Vietnam, and she came here during the Vietnam War after spending time in a refugee camp. My dad is American, but he exited stage right at a very young age when I was like 5 years old. So as far as my real estate journey, I am a real estate attorney. I have my own law firm in Connecticut, and I'm also licensed in Massachusetts. So my clientele for my law firm is investor-based, meaning that I work with a lot of real estate investors who are sometimes purchasing their very first investment property, all the way to investors who are very seasoned and purchasing multifamily or commercial properties. And I've been an attorney for 12 years now, and I've helped, as you said, thousands of clients over that time invest in real estate.
Wow, awesome. Let's back it up a little bit. So I know you mentioned you were being raised by a single mom after your dad left.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share with us a little bit how that might have shaped your money mindset growing up? And when did that might have started to shift? What you feel like were good things that you were taking away from it? What were some of those things that may not be serving you that you had to really actively work on to change on your wealth building journey?
Sure. Like you said, I did grow up with a single mother. And so she oftentimes worked 2 or 3 jobs at a time. And I really would watch her growing up. Like there were nights that I would go to work with her and, she'd order a pizza and I would eat and do homework while she's working. And that was because we didn't have a babysitter. And there was just a lot of things that I was taught at a very young age, the difference between need and want. So when I go to school and there's kids with like the latest tennis shoes or the latest hat or whatever, because back then there's no cell phones to compare to, right? You're just looking at other kids and you're seeing like what they have versus what you don't. And I would go home to my mom and say like, well, I want this. And it was like, do you need it or do you want it? So I learned at a very young age that distinction. I also knew that if I ever wanted to go to college, that I would have to earn my way there. There was no trust fund that was going to pay for that. And so I learned, like you said, from a very young age to get good grades and earn a scholarship. So I did do that. I earned a scholarship to college. And then whatever I couldn't afford to make up the difference, I didn't get a full ride, I got a partial ride. I took student loans out. And then once I got out of undergrad, like the month before I was due to graduate, my mom took me to a free one-day real estate seminar. So this was like 20 years ago now. And back then, like you couldn't just go on Google or YouTube and like figure out how to invest in real estate. You actually had to attend a seminar. So she took me to a free one-day seminar and like that was it. I was like a month away from graduating with a double degree from undergrad, and I did graduate, but then I was like, screw that. Like I want to go do real estate now. So at the time, the guru that was teaching the course, at the end, he had like a Q&A and you could go up and meet and greet him. So I went and met him. I got his phone number and then I asked him for a job. And he was like, yeah, okay. Because he met with thousands of people. So the next month I called him and I asked for a job. He blew me off. And I did that every single month for 6 months. And then after the 6th month, he was like, are you going to stop calling me? And I'm like, no, I'll get your coffee. I'll get your dry cleaning. I don't care like what I have to do. Just let me in the room to learn the real estate strategies, because at that seminar, that guru was charging anywhere between $3,000 to $40,000 20 years ago to learn how to invest in real estate. And like I said, I didn't have that money because we grew up poor. I grew up poor. And, my mom, like I said, was always working multiple jobs. There's no extra money to go pay $3,000 for a real estate course. So after 6 months, he finally gave me a shot and he let me work for him. And then that's how I learned how to invest in real estate, because other investors that he would sell his course to would pay $3,000 to $40,000 to go attend these courses. But in the background, I would sit in the back of the room and get his coffee and get his dry cleaning. But then I got to learn what they were learning and I got paid for it. So that's how the real estate investing story started.
That's amazing. First of all, what was your double degrees in?
It's in international relations and French.
Interesting. We're definitely going to chat more about that. But I just love what you share about that power of consistency, the power of taking action. Because I think about a lot of the audience who's listening, you can see a lot of things on YouTube. You can find a lot of things. You can Google a lot of things. But that information can only take you so far if you're not taking the actions. So I love what you share about consistently just calling this guy for every month for 6 months until he realized that you got to keep calling him until he gives you a job. So I love that you share that. And I love how creative that is in terms of being able to learn while working for him and understanding that hey, I don't mind doing whatever this needs to be done so that you can absorb the information and continue to take actions from there. So for the audience who's listening, if you're in a place when you're like, hey, I don't have any money to start in real estate, right? The first thing Joette just told you there is that you need the skill. So if you don't have money to pay for tuition to do something, go to the free meeting in your area and you can find experienced investor there. And for us, sometimes at some point as you're an experienced investor, your time is so limited. So that's how you can contribute, right? You have the time, you have the hungriness to get started. So you can partner with someone experienced, which is exactly what Joette did. So I really love what you share. So you went to school for international relation and French. How did that even translate into real estate investing? Because a lot of people sometimes get a little bit concerned, right? Because they may go to school not for finance, not for investing, not for any of these things. What is something that you feel like maybe your skills that was transferable that gave you the confidence to hey, I can just do investing, even that was not at all what I went to school for?
I think that the degree laid a good foundation, though, because after working for the guru for 5 years, I then decided to go to law school. And you can't go to law school without the undergraduate degree. And I decided to become a real estate attorney specifically so that I could help protect future investments that I was going to do, that I knew I was going to do, and also any clients that I worked with in the future. I also think that the international relations degree, it related in the sense of I learned how to negotiate and mediate conflict, which is in any industry, but also super important in real estate because you're always negotiating contracts. And then if a conflict comes up, which is rare that it doesn't, that you can mediate that in a really calm and even manner with a fair hand so that everybody walks away like they didn't lose. And I think that's really important, is to have the emotion of the deal itself is also very important and not just the numbers.
Yeah, I think that's very important because I went to school for biology. Real estate investing is definitely not my background. But similar to what you share, right? You really took away the negotiation, maybe even the emotional intelligence to be able to negotiate and really understand both sides and then create that situation that would protect your clients, but also make sure that you can come to an agreement. For biology, I was just very good at problem solving. So that was a skill set that I took into real estate investing. So for the audience who's listening, it doesn't matter what you went to school for. It doesn't matter what you were doing before. A lot of those that you have accumulated can be transferred. So all those things are never wasted. So you always take those things with you and you're never starting from scratch, right? So those can be your strength that you can leverage, even if you're just starting out in real estate. Joette, in terms of when you get first started, what is the strategy that you were using to invest in real estate? What did you decide to start with?
So the year that I started investing was after I had worked for the guru for 5 years. I had learned all the different strategies, and then I decided to go to law school. So the first year of law school, I was not able to work. The law school that I went to required 100% concentration on your studies. And so they wouldn't allow you to work, but I needed money. So I got a bit creative and I took the knowledge that I accumulated from the guru and I started working and investing in mobile homes. However, I didn't have necessarily the money to buy the home. So what I did was, I would not recommend this to anybody, but this is what I did. I went and I maxed out the amount of the student loans that I could borrow. And I took that student loan money and I used that money to buy mobile homes. So I would drive for dollars. My husband, who back then was my boyfriend, he and I would drive for dollars around different mobile home parks and we would cold call and we would buy these homes. I would use the money from the student loans to buy it. And then I would go to school Monday through Friday. And then on Saturday mornings, we would go to the home and I would scrub toilets and he would paint and demo. And then we would fix up the home. And then we would put like a free ad in like your penny saver, like your local coupon books. And those would get distributed, or I'd pay like a little bit of money for a newspaper ad. And then we would sell the home on seller financing and take installment payments. And those payments paid back the law school loans, the interest, and paid for law school. And so that's how we started, was me going to school Monday through Friday law school and scrubbing toilets on the weekends and like working our way up. And then eventually we had enough to buy like a REO, because back then this was like 2010, right after the crash. So there's REOs and we built that portfolio up to like multifamily and apartment buildings, which is where we are now. But in the beginning, I was scrubbing toilets. That's where I started.
Wow. So it was one of those great story of hard work, right? Like, you were going to school, but you know that there's a future that you're building for. And I think a lot of our audience can relate that at some point, right? Like I said, your time may be limited, but you can carve out some time to build wealth and then sweat equity, right? Those are what we always have to get started first. I also really love what you just shared, Joette, about really knowing, in this case, kind of like knowing where your audience lives, right? Like, you put the right ad at the right place where your avatar that would want to buy these things from you would be looking at. So that was a very creative way of not only knowing your strategy, but also knowing who your tenants are. Mm-hmm. For the audience who are listening, you can apply this, right? Depends on whatever strategy you're using. Know your audience, know your tenants, know where they hang out, know where they read, what they want from their property. Then that really help you create an advantage so that you actually find the right audience for your property, but also create a right environment that they would want to live in. You say you start out first with a mobile home. Mm-hmm. And then you said now you move on to REOs. Mm-hmm. So now, is that your main thing that you're doing? Just doing a lot of REOs buying?
No. So now we have a lot of buy and hold. So our portfolio is anywhere between single family to like small apartment buildings, and in between multifamily as well. And then we flip if we are going to have an opportunity to buy something, but it doesn't necessarily fit our buying criteria, we can flip it and sell it. And then I have the law firm as well. So that's also like another income strategy on top of the real estate.
Wow. Tell us a little bit more, because this is something I'm always curious as I ask experienced investors, right? All of these pieces set the overall wealth building picture. So I hear you have flip, you have your buy and hold, you have your law firm. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about how these all fit into your bigger picture of wealth building, whether it's cash flow, tax benefits, active income. Tell us more about how all these pieces fit together for your overall wealth building.
So my overall goal is to create a legacy for our 3 children, right? I don't want my 3 children to have to work as hard as I had to work to get to where I am. Obviously, I value hard work and I want them to know the ethics of that, but I don't want them to struggle in the same way that I did. And one of the questions you asked was like, how did my upbringing affect my financial mindset? And I would say that my financial mindset has been for a very long time one of scarcity, where I was always like, I better work for what I got. I only have this much, so I have to keep it all for myself. And like nothing comes easy. So I always have to strive and to achieve that. And I think that that is the mindset of a lot of immigrants, because when you come to a new country, like nothing's given to you, right? You have to earn everything. That mindset of growing up in a single mother household who had 3 jobs, and there was always like, well, you can't have that because we don't have the money, but do you really need it? That type of questioning developed in me, like I said, a scarcity mindset, which I'm working on. I think that how our portfolio now fits into our legacy is that the buy and hold portfolio brings passive income. The flipping brings, large sums of money, right? But that is not great for tax purposes. So that's why we can offset it with the W-2 income from being a law firm. But it's also, the law firm is, I own it, but I'm also an employee of it. So it's not necessarily like, we've had in-depth conversations with our tax accountant about how to set up these different entities in order to serve our legacy and our purpose overall, and then minimize the taxes. So I've got 401k programs for my employees, and then that allows you to have, other benefits as an employer. So there's so many strategies within our portfolio, and all of them are meant to increase it, but also not overpay on taxes and just pay what we need to pay.
I love that. And I think that's why I always really want to ask experienced investors on where they're considering. I'm in a space of pivoting as well. And so with that, whenever I think about, there's like 5 things I think about when it comes to wealth building is active income, passive income, appreciation, tax benefits, and impact. So I really love like what you just shared there, how each of these pieces fit into those things, and how essentially now all these things work together so that you don't have to work as hard and you can save on tax and just be smart about building wealth. So that's very important. So for the audience who's listening, right? If you're new, focus on one thing first, right? Joette just shared that she did not just start out doing all these different things. So if you're new, start with one thing first. Now, once you become so good at that one thing, you can consider diversify your portfolio. So now you can have all these benefits of your wealth building journey. I want to switch gear a little bit to talk about your real estate attorney business. So I guess one thing first I want to ask is, as someone who's done thousands of closings, what are some of those legal blind spots that I feel like most new investors don't even know that they have when they're just getting in the game?
I think that a lot of that has to do with the paperwork. Oftentimes, investors don't understand that the paperwork of the deal is what sets the foundation. It's the bedrock of the deal. So if anything goes sideways, the first thing that a judge is going to look at or lawyers are going to look at is, what does the contract say? And sometimes I have investors come through my doors who don't understand the implications and consequences of signing a contract that they didn't understand, or didn't understand what their obligations were. Like, for instance, a contract is not binding without some type of consideration. Consideration is considered in most contracts to be money, right? Everybody puts down a deposit in order to bind a contract. And sometimes I have investors who don't understand that, hey, you have to put a deposit down, and you and I can't just sign a piece of paper saying that I'm going to buy something from you, but not put down a deposit, because if there's no deposit, you can go find a new buyer. And the same thing is true, especially because I do a lot of creative finance in my practice. So it's not just traditional real estate, but when I say creative finance, it's kind of what I did with the mobile home parks, where I sold the park on an installment and people were making monthly payments. So I do a lot of that. And I think that there's a lot of investors who YouTube and Google what is creative finance and what are these strategies. But to your point, they don't actually understand the nuances and the details. They might have a great overall picture, but they don't understand the nitty gritty and how to really protect themselves in that type of deal, which is why I do what I do and why I'm passionate about helping investors, because I want to help other people further their portfolios and leave a legacy for their children the way that I did. And I wish that I had the type of guidance back then that I can now provide, because when I was doing this 20 years ago, I didn't have an attorney to help me understood what they were doing and could point out the nuances. And so I think for new investors, they really need to understand the strategy. There is a advantage to being brave enough to just get out there and do it, but also you really need to make sure you understand the legal implications of just doing it.
Yeah, for sure. What advice do you have for new investors or even experienced investors who are considering adding an attorney to their team or need a new attorney for their team? What are some of those questions they should ask their attorney to see whether this attorney would be a good fit for them as real estate investors?
I think that that's really dependent upon the strategy that the investor wants to execute, right? So if the investor's just looking to obtain real estate in the traditional manner, which is put 20% down, go get a bank loan and close, then I think that most real estate attorneys will be okay for that purpose. And I will also point out that a lot of the US is not an attorney state. There's only like a dozen or so states that use attorneys. Every other state uses a title company. And so if you're looking to add a real estate attorney to your team, I think it's important to know, what do they practice? What areas do they cover? And are they familiar with certain roadblocks that come up? Like, I would say that in my transactions, there's always like it's the same 10 or 12 problems that come up in a deal on the traditional side. Now, if you're an investor who's looking to do what I kind of practice my niche in, which is in creative finance, which is more like seller financing, rent to own, subject to existing financing, that type of thing, then it's really important to get an attorney on your team that understands those strategies and how to execute them.
Got it. Essentially, it depends on what the investor strategy is. But ultimately, you would want an attorney who has practiced a lot in the strategy that you're going to do.
Correct.
Because you have that power in repetition. You've seen thousands of contracts, you've seen how thousands of investors in closing. So you have expertise and you can easily spot what is missing, what is wrong that can help protect investors. So for the investors listening, right? Like, yes, you can go out there, you can wing it, but also be prepared that you may also get yourself in hot water. Or you can partner with someone who is experienced in what you're doing, and all they charge is not equity. You have the full equity. You just have to pay them to be a part of your team. So that is a really easy thing to do versus learning it through some expensive tuition money when you lose the money down the road. So I love that you share that. I know you mentioned creative financing. Break it down a little bit. What is creative financing? Who is it a good fit for? And who is it not a good fit for?
So creative financing is a way to purchase or even sell real estate without using the traditional methods. I think that most people in the US, when they're buying their primary home or even their first few investment properties, they have the mindset of save 20% down, put that down as a down payment, go get a loan, and then make your monthly mortgage payments to the bank. And that is totally fine. But creative finance is a way to accelerate your investing without having to save 20% every single time. And when I say creative financing, I'm talking about the strategies like I mentioned before, like seller financing. So for instance, when I sold the mobile homes, I took payments. So the person, instead of going to get a bank loan, I would not take my full purchase price and I would just take monthly payments on them with interest until the mobile home was paid off. And you can do that with a house too. So seller financing is an option. Rent to own, if any of your listeners are tenants in their property and they want to buy their home, they could strike up an agreement with the landlord to sell them the home. And like every month when they're paying their rent, a portion of their rent goes towards the down payment on the house. And then eventually they can purchase the home that way. There's also subject to existing financing, which means that you take over the seller's existing mortgage on their house at their interest rate, which is hopefully lower than whatever the current market rate that you're getting at this moment would be. But I will say that with subject to existing financing, it comes with a lot of caution signs. It is a strategy that is very nuanced. It's very particular. There's only one way to do it legally, and it would involve the help of an attorney. So I would not advise that people just go on Google or YouTube and do this and then think that they can execute it on their own. There's also wholesaling, where if a person perhaps needs to build up a lump sum of money because they want to save the 20%, but they need to get there faster than just their weekly or biweekly paycheck, they could wholesale. Wholesaling involves getting a property under contract for one price and then without purchasing it, selling it for a higher price. So if I get your house under contract for 100 and I sell my contract to another investor for 110, then I make the $10,000 difference without ever having to buy it. One thing that I'm seeing a lot of in my market right now is something that I call novations, which is basically how to flip a house without ever buying it. So a lot of people, they watch TV, and HGTV has popularized those flip this house shows, but that always involves buying the house and then you have to renovate it and you have to pay the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance while you're renovating it. A novation, and that's what I call it in my office. It may be coined as other terms out on the internet, but a novation is the ability to get the property under contract. You don't have to buy it. And while the property is under contract and the contract term is maybe 90 to 120 days, you are doing cosmetic fixes to the house. Maybe you're painting it, putting in new carpet. You're just fixing it up to make it look nicer. And then once you fix it, it goes on the market for more money. And you make the difference between the contract price you had with the seller before it was renovated and the money that it sells for on the market after it's renovated. So you make the difference, but you never had to buy it. You never had to qualify for a mortgage. You never had to pay the mortgage, the taxes, or the insurance. So it's a way to flip without actually purchasing the home. So that's what I mean when I say creative finance. And obviously, anyone who's listening to me needs to understand and check whether or not that strategy is legal in their state, because it may not be.
Awesome. I love that you share so many different strategies. And I think this is what's cool about real estate, because people can invest and can build wealth no matter where they're at in their financial journey. So if you have a high W-2 and you have already saved up the money, you can go out there and buy something with 20% down and you can build your wealth that way. If you're someone who is more scrappy, who like, hey, I don't have enough money saved, maybe I don't even have good credit, all those type of things, there are creative ways that you can do to build your wealth. So just don't let whatever you experience right now to stop you from building a better future for yourself through real estate investing. And Joette, for people who's listening, can you give them the first step? If they're considering that, okay, this sounds interesting, maybe I want to get into creative financing, what would be the next step that they should take on this journey?
The next step is to educate themselves and to make sure that they are learning from a reputable source. There's a lot of gurus out on the internet who say that they can teach you how to do this or do that, but they need to, like I said, check with their state law to make sure that that strategy is first legal. And then second, find a reputable either company or somebody that can teach them how to implement their chosen strategy in their state. So education is really the first step, which is exactly what I did when I worked with that guru. I knew that I was hooked on real estate, but I also knew that I didn't know anything. And so I took the time to educate myself and found a person who could teach me those things in the legal and ethical manner.
Awesome. So don't just go out there after one TikTok video and attempt this.
Please don't do that.
Okay, I definitely want to switch gear to your mystery question segment. So the mystery question is a question that was left behind by our previous guest. And your mystery question is, what is your biggest life lesson in the last decade?
My oldest is 10 years old. And so in the last decade, learning how to be a parent has been very eye-opening. And then also thinking about what type of parent do I want to be and what lessons do I want to take from my childhood and in my life and pass those on to my children so that they can be better people. And like I said earlier, so that they don't have to struggle as much as I did.
I love that you share that. I don't have kids yet, but I think that's something that I've been pondering. And this is why I love the real estate community, because I have people who are ahead of me, who are real estate investing and who are parents. And so just getting to learn from what they're experiencing. Similarly, like I didn't grow up with money. So that question has always been like, how do I instill the work ethic and the service attitude to my kid? Why same thing, don't make them go through all the struggle that I had gone through and still be able to give them support and then help them grow further than where I've gone, right? But that is such a balancing act, I can imagine. So I love that you share about your life lesson as a mom and how that also helped you learn more about yourself and about what your upbringing and what you choose to keep, what you choose not to pass on. You've shared so much with us in the last 30 minutes or so, and I would love the audience to hear about a charity or cause that you support and for them to make a donation to that on your behalf as a thank you for your time being here today.
Thank you. That would be wonderful. The charity that I support is called Candid, which is spelled Candaid. And for the past 4 years, my law firm and my husband's real estate company have partnered together with them. And what that organization will do is they have several outreach programs for kids, but the one that we take on is called a bike build. And so we go into our Title I schools, which are schools where 90% of the kids must be receiving free or reduced lunch because of their family's financial situation, which is exactly what I did, receiving free and reduced lunch as a kid. And what we do is we bring the community together and we build bikes for these children. And then we do that like on the evening. And then the next morning we go into the school and we have an assembly. And it's kind of like a big Oprah moment where we like pull the curtains back and it's like, you get a bike and you get a bike and you get a bike.
Oh, that's amazing.
Meant to get kids off screens, right?
Yeah.
You get them off TikTok and out to the neighborhood and learning how to be a kid. And I think that's so important, especially in today's society where like everybody is like glued to their screen and they don't know how to communicate with other human beings because everyone is, on social media. So it's called Candid, and that's what they do is they go all over the country. There's probably a Candid office wherever your listeners live, and they will go into those Title I schools in your community and give these bikes or skateboards back to these children who are, under the income levels that are considered like the poverty level in that area.
Awesome. I love that so much. We'll put all that link in the show notes. Thank you so much, Joette, for being here with us today. Tell the audience how they can get in touch with you or potentially work with you and follow your journey overall.
So I am on all the social media platforms, not TikTok, but I am on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram under Trinh Law, which is my law firm. My website is trin.law, and I'm on a bunch of other podcasts as well. Thank you so much for having me, but I'm also on other podcasts, so they could certainly search me and listen to the other podcasts if they want to hear more about my journey.
Awesome. We'll link all that in the show note as well. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Joette. It's been a blast chatting with you, and I can't wait to hear more about what you've been up to.
Thank you so much.
Till next time.
Bye-bye.